Hi everyone, and welcome back to another class on the Great Famine. Today what we're going to actually be taking a look at is some different sources, because I know in our last chapter we in the Industrial Revolution we actually didn't take a look at many sources, and they are something that's going to come up in our exams. So it is something that I want you just to have a bit of practice on, and we're going to go through a few different sources in today's class. Now, if you're wondering where to find these different sources, you can either open your book on page 196, or else you can just stay tuned onto this video and you can work off this video if you don't have the book with you. Now, what I always start to do before I start to look at the different sources is I just read the questions. So I read the questions that go along with the source just to get an idea of what they are asking me for. So question one here, are each of these sources here primary or secondary sources? So you obviously know what a primary and secondary source is. A primary source is if it came from that time period, if it was actually created on the day, and on a secondary source, it would have been, say, maybe a photo taken of something that they redid or remade. We were looking at one of the coffin ships that were remade there last week, and that was a secondary source because it was rebuilt. If it was the original coffin ship, then it would have been a primary source. So it's important that you know the difference between them when you're going into your different exams. Which source would you consider the most reliable? Okay, so read through the sources, take a look through them, and then pick out which one you think would be most reliable. Usually the most reliable is one that's a primary source and factual about the time. Okay, so it might have a date on it, it'll state when it happened. In source one, which year had the highest immigration figures? So we'll be taking a look through that graph later. And on question 5, we see how would you describe the people living in Cork in source 2? Okay, so that's looking at the people living conditions. Okay, sorry, I skipped number 4, I think. How do immigration figures in source 1 compare with the progress of the blight? So from your information that you've studied so far, how does the immigration increase or decrease depending on the failure of the crop, so depending on the blight within the country? Question 6, what cities are what cities are they immigrating to? So where are the people immigrating to? Where are they going to? Um, how do the name of the cities in source 2 compare with the name in source 3? So that's asking you to compare two separate sources. So it's important that you state which source you're talking about and what you've learned from them. Question 8. What does this advertisement in, or what does the advertisement in source 3 say about the ships? So that's kind of looking at, were they advertising them as nice living conditions? Were they looking or saying that it would be a luxurious boat in comparison to what they really were? And just to kind of figure out, because people were trying to sell these tickets on board ships. Question 9, how are the people fed on board? So what is the living conditions and food on board? Question 10, how does the account in source 4 compare with the advertisement in source 3? Okay. Question 11, what message in source 5 is given to those who might be thinking of immigrating? Explain your answer using evidence, and that's probably one of the most important words, from the sources. So in this one, it's asking you to see what message was given to the people that were thinking of immigrating, okay? And it wants you to state with evidence. So they want you to take information from the source to back up your answer. So you're probably used to that from English class, where you'll do like a point, a quote, and then you'll explain it. So a PQE, okay? Now here I'm just going to go through a few of the different sources, just so you can get a better idea of what's happening within the image. Okay, I'm going to start here with source 1, and we can see immigration from Ireland between the years 1843 and 1851. Okay, if we start over here on the left, So in 1843, we can see that it was just below 5,000 people immigrated, so roughly around 4,000 people. In 1844, this increased to just 5,000 people. So it actually looks like it's a small bit above 5,000 people immigrated. Now, this doesn't state where they immigrated to, it's just looking at how many people actually left the country. If we go over here to 1845, there's roughly around 7,000 people immigrated. The following year, in 1846, we see that 10,000 people immigrated. And next thing, there was a huge jump in 1847. So if you remember from our presentations, we called 1847 Black 47 because it was actually one of the worst years for the blight. Now, it wasn't the worst years for the actual failure of potato crops, but it was one of the worst years for starvation and hunger within Ireland. So conditions of living actually got the worst in 1847. So it's important to see how fast or how quick it increased. And it increased all the way up to 20,000 people immigrating. The following year, we can see down here in 1848, there was around 17,000 people immigrating, which is still a huge amount. 1850, we were followed with another 20,000. 18, was that 1850? No, 1845 was another 20,000. 1850 then was around 17,000 or 19,000. And then in 1851, we had one of the highest years on record, which went all the way up to 23,000 people immigrating. Okay, so that's kind of important just to see the jump from in 1 year in the amount of immigration and why it actually happened. Source 2, we have immigration from Cork, and as you can see here, people are sitting on their trunks, so they have the trunks underneath them. Dara sent in a photo of one of these trunks. He said it was actually from the 18th century, or sorry, the 19th century, so it would have been anything from the last decade, and that would, he said that it wasn't during the famine though that it went to America, but it was still very interesting to see. Um, then in the background here, we can see different masts for the ships. So we can see the ships in the background. We can see the horse-drawn cart that would have brought in all these boxes. And here is what's some of the most important things. What we can see in the background there is we can see different signs. And I can just read a few of them there. One of them is for Boston. The other one is for Quebec. I can't make out the other ones, but there is different signs in the background that are stating different places or different journeys you can go to. Okay, so here we're taking a quick look at source 3. Now this is on page 196, and this is a newspaper article from 1849. So we can see the date just here. Okay, now what this is, it's the weekly communication with the United States. So it's actually showing an advertisement in a newspaper for different ships that are sailing from Ireland to America. Okay, now it says a regular line of packet ships for, I think it's packet ships for New York. Sorry, now the newspaper is a bit broken, so it's kind of hard to see. This states the name of the ships, the commanders, the tons registered, and the sailing date. So you can see that just along here. Then it goes through the names of the ships, it goes through the names of the commanders, it goes through the tons that they were allowed and the dates that they were able to sail. Each line is for a different place. So for New York, for Boston, what one does this one say? A Philadelphia line packets. There was also Philadelphia line packets to Cork. So there was different ones along here, and it states all the different names of the ships, names of the pilots, the weight that the ship can take, and the actual sailing date. Then down here it goes through a small bit about the actual ship. So it says sorry, now the text is quite broken, so you might struggle reading it. These ships are the first class copper and copper fastened fast sailors and accommodated by men of experience in trade. So what they mean by copper fastened is how the ships would have been built. So they're trying to say that the ships were actually sturdy and that they were strong, fast ships. Okay. Um, afford excellence, accommodation for passengers, and sail pleasantly. So this is saying that it's a luxury sort of thing. It's saying that it's first class and that it'll be a pleasant journey. When what we know is, one, they weren't first class. They were actually for bringing logs over, and they were for bringing cargo. Two, they weren't luxury by any means. That they wouldn't actually have a nice journey. Most of them wouldn't actually even make it, a third of them. The passengers proceeding by the above ships will be found I think that's £7, of bread a week, and £10 of meat, vinegar and medicine, agreeable to the American laws. So the American laws stated that people on board would have to be given different things such as water, food, to make sure that when they got over to America they weren't malnourished and only fit for the grave. Okay, so they were stating that they would be given these things on board. Now, as we know, as the journeys went longer and longer out at sea, these rations would be broken down. So maybe on the first day they might have gotten the correct amount of bread or the correct amount of meat, but as the days and weeks went on, they would have got less and less food. Um, applied to Harden and Liverpool, or sorry, yeah, I think that's to apply in these different places. So they're the different places you can apply from, or Roach Brothers and Co. And then it's giving you an address in Eden Quay in Dublin. Then it also says that the public will please take note that we have no offices in Dublin except for 30 Eden Quay. So it's just letting you know where you can actually buy these tickets and where you can find them. Okay, so this is actually a very, very interesting source, and it's important to try to think, is this a primary or is it a secondary? Did it come from around the time that the famine was taking place, or is it something that was recreated afterwards? Okay guys, this is source 4. So this is on page 196. So I'll just leave it on board there for a while. What you can do is you can pause it. What it's taking you through is a guy called Denver's journey from Ireland to Canada on board a coffin ship. He says a lot of interesting things about the actual quality of living and how it was on board. Now, there's certain words that you mightn't understand. Driveling would be kind of a rambling idiot. Fetid, which is a word here, is kind of like a disgusting atmosphere, which is kind of important. And I'm trying to see, is there any other words that you might struggle with? No, that's about it. So he just talks about the living conditions such as food and water on board, which is very important to know about. Now, this is source 5, which is the last source, and it shows a cartoon from Punch magazine, which was a popular magazine at the time. This article was from 1848, and if you look at this in the book, it actually kind of looks as if it's all the one image, when really there's a dividing line down the middle. Okay, so there's a dividing line down the middle. I'd like you to be looking at this and seeing what it's trying to say. Um, Personally, what I'm taking from it is this is the same family, just a few different years apart. And take a look at how many family members are in this picture in comparison to this one. What else do you notice? Do you notice animals or anything happening within the picture? The reason why I think it's the same person is I think this is the father figure, and you can see his hat in the background. This is the wife, and this is the wife back then. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at the comparison and draw up your own conclusions. Okay guys, that takes us through all the different, all 5 sources. Make sure that you read the questions out here just so that you're familiar with what they're asking you to do. Be sure to read through all the different sources and to scan them and understand them. Okay, this is your schoolwork for today's class, so make sure you get this done. And what I would like you to do for homework is make sure that you photograph these answers and put them up online. Okay, so submit them into the Google Classroom. Okay, thanks very much, guys. Best of luck with it.